Officer Hettel with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. I'm going to talk about some of the rules and regulations for this upcoming lobster mini-season. First off, to have a safe, productive trip is safety. So you want to make sure you're safe. Every year we do have accidents. We're always hoping that there's not a fatality. Unfortunately, every few years we have one. So one of the main things to do is use caution while you're out there. There's going to be a lot of people on the water. You need to have a very good lookout on the boat. Whoever's driving the vessel needs to be paying attention wherever they're going. You can have other people on the boat looking out as well, but the driver cannot be distracted. That's normally what happens is someone gets run over while they're in the water. Divers that are just swimming around the water, if they're farther away from their flag, they're hard to pick up sometimes, and that's when some of the accidents can happen. So everyone's got lobster fever, and one thing you can do to avoid hurting somebody is anchor your boat instead of just dropping divers off and having them swim around the boat. We've had boat operators back up their boats and not realize they've had swimmers close to the engines and actually injure them and even kill them. So it's good if you get to a spot and you're going to put people in the water to just anchor the vessel and turn off the engines. Next is your dive flag. Anytime you have people in the water, this has to be up and displayed. For a vessel, it's got to be 20 by 24 inches. And if you're going to swim around with one in the water, that's got to be 12 by 12 inches. That creates a 300-foot bubble around you that boats should not be up on plane. Any vessel entering that bubble that's created by that dive flag needs to be off plane and paying attention to who's around in there. That's letting them know that there is a diver in the water. Now once you go into a channel, a marked channel with a dive flag, that bubble decreases to 100 feet. So with the dive flag up, as a diver, it's your responsibility to stay within that bubble that's created by this dive flag. And then as a vessel operator, it's your job to stay out of that bubble. So if people do that and pay attention, normally this is a great system to keep people safe. Other stuff to keep yourself safe while you're out there is a pair of gloves. You know, wear those or you're going to get your hands cut up. They don't call them spiny lobster for nothing. You cannot grab one of these lobsters barehanded and not expect to be bleeding afterwards. There are some marine mammals or marine creatures that you need to be careful of out there too. There's sea urchins, there's stone crabs, there's jellyfish, there's lionfish all up under these rocks where a lot of these lobster are. So you do need to be careful about what you're doing. You're feeling around and trying to get these lobsters out. So just be aware of those things. All right, next we're going to go into the rules. There's a lot of rules, and unfortunately a lot of them are actually misdemeanors. Some stuff we can write like a criminal citation with, or just a ticket, but a lot of these are misdemeanors. They're punishable by 60 days in jail and up to a $500 fine. So you want to make sure you understand the rules before you go out there and start getting the lobster. The first thing is you can't have any egg-bearing females. If there's a lobster and you pull it open, or pull it up and there's like a spongy orange material underneath the tail, those are going to be eggs, and that has to be released back alive to the water. You have to have your measuring device in the water with you. You have to swim around this while you're actively harvesting lobster, and the lobster have to be measured in the water before they go on the boat. What I recommend is that someone like the captain or someone that knows what they're doing has people measure them in the water, but then take those lobster and just put them in a bag or put them on the deck in the boat, and then one person who's responsible for double checking measures them with the measuring gauge and puts them in the live well wherever they're going to keep them. And once they're in there, they're considered in your possession. So measure them in the water and then double check while you're in the boat. You're allowed 6 per person, and that's a possession limit. That's even while you're on land for mini season, and even people driving out of the Keys, after 2 days, you're only allowed 12 per person. So one person can't take everybody's lobster and have them with them. So it is 6 per person per day for a total of 12 lobster during mini season. It is a participation sport. We understand that there's a lot of kids that lobster that maybe aren't super at getting it, but as long as they're helping, as long as people are in the water actively trying to catch the lobster and helping out, you can count 6 per person for them. A lot of times we come across people that they're in the boat and they're not wet, or they're a little kid, or they have no plans on getting in the water. You cannot count lobster for them. You can't count 6 lobster for someone who's not participating in the harvest of the lobster. So everybody has to be participating to count for, to get 6 per person. One thing we have a problem with on mini season is double tripping. People think it's okay to go out and catch your 6, bring them back to the house or bring them back wherever you're at and dump them off and then go out and get more. That's poaching. You're only allowed 6 per person per day. So anybody doing that is a poacher, and you're stealing from the resource for the state of Florida, from all the people that are doing it correctly. During mini season, there is no night diving, so you can't be in the water at dark. That's a safety thing. People talk about so many people being in the water on the dive flag. Yeah, when it's dark out, it's almost impossible to see someone in the water. So very dangerous. So stay out of the water when it's dark. And then no snorkeling canals, marinas, or any improved shoreline during mini season. So if there's a seawall or anything like that, a boat ramp, anything that's man-made, you have to be 300 feet away from it. So no snorkeling canals, marinas, or improved shoreline, and no artificial habitat. If there's anything that's purposely put out to attract lobster, so they crawl in there and hide, like pipes, car hoods, or washer machines. If you're diving on that stuff that was purposely put out for lobster, that's also a misdemeanor. That's illegal. So you cannot harvest lobster off artificial habitat. Like I said, a lot of those crimes are misdemeanors. You can actually, if you're from out of town, you can either get a court date or you can actually go to jail, depending on the circumstances. So gear and catching. So one thing you're not allowed to do as far as catching them, you're not allowed to snag a lobster, like with a mop, anything that would ensnare them with their horns. You're not allowed to snatch them with a hook of any type. You're not allowed to puncture the shell with a spear or any device that would jab into them and create a hole. You're allowed to catch them by hand. You catch them with a net and a tickle stick where you move them into the net and then grab them. And then this is also allowed too, where it's a snare. They'll go around their tail. And then when you get it there, you let it go and it snatches them. That is legal. Once you get them and you measure them, and measuring is done from in between the horns to the back of the carapace. They're actually like two parts of a lobster. There's a gap in between here. And you take the gauge and you put it right between the horns and you make sure you're not catching the eye membrane. There's like a little meaty piece that goes between their eyes. That's not what you grab. You have to push that down and go horns, shell to shell on the back side. And if this gauge falls off the back of the lobster like that, it's no good. If it rests on top of the lobster from the horns, it hooks in and stays like that, it's a good lobster and you can keep it. So it has to be greater than 3 inches. A lot of people think that it just has to be 3 inches, but it has to be greater than 3 inches. So the gauge should be 3 inches, and that's why it has to be over it. All right, another big thing out there as far as having a great mini season is it's crazy. People's tensions get very high. Everyone seems to have a hard time with each other. Everyone's got lobster fever. But the more courteous you are out there to your fellow boaters and your fellow lobsters, the better time you're going to have out there. So try not to crowd each other. You know, if you see another boat and they're catching lobster, if it's so crowded that you have to kind of come close to them, do yourself a favor and come up and talk to them and ask them and say, hey, do you mind if I anchor here? Most people don't have a problem with that, but they always seem to have a problem with just someone kind of encroaching on their area. But just talk to each other, be nice, and that'll help everyone have a safe and productive lobster mini season.
Hi, I'm Barb Herzog. I'm the manager of Sigsbee Marina here on the Sigsbee Naval Air Station base. We really would love to have you guys come in and see us during mini lobster season. John has gone over all the rules and everything. There's a couple of things that I want to add to that. All of the things that John was talking about for the equipment, we do sell at Sigsbee Marina, including the loop snare, the dive flags. We have floating dive flags that you can have in the water with you and that type of thing. So come on in and see us. We also have fuel, ice, bait, everything there. We do have one rule that is only during lobster season, mini lobster season, in the first couple weeks of lobster season, and that is that you take your own lobster heads out to sea and dispose of them yourself. Too many people doing it and putting them in our freezer. We don't have enough staff to keep emptying that all day long. So we do request and require that you dispose of your own lobster head. We do have a fish cleaning area here. You can after they've been all measured, you can clean them there, and then you have to take the heads back out and dispose of them at sea. And that's really our main change that we have during lobster season. We do have copies of these regulations in our store also that are the mini lobster and lobster season rules and regs by the Fish and Wildlife. So stop in and pick that up too. And you can always give us a call if you have any questions. We are at 305-293-4434, and our store is open 7:45 in the morning until 5 p.m., although the fuel dock does close at 4:30. Thanks, and have a great mini season.
Since you've watched all the way to the end of this video, use the code word crustacean to get a $5 discount on a lobster mini-season related purchase of $20 or more at Sigsbee Marina.